Hi, if you hadn't already worked it out, this is part 2 of my ADHD Awareness Month video. If you hadn't watched part 1, please go back and watch that. There should be a link in the description. Yep, otherwise you're going to be very confused. For those who have watched part 1 but need a slight refresher, this is the last thing I said.
It's lacking certain nuances, which become much more obvious when you add ADHD to the mix.
And we're now going to explore what those nuances are. Alright.
Intrusive thoughts. Everyone gets intrusive thoughts. They are the unwanted, disturbing thoughts that occasionally pop up in your head. A bit like the devil on your shoulder trope. For neurotypicals, it's fairly easy to just brush them off. But for ADHD and other neurodivergences, it's hard to brush off a devil when they've moved into your ear canal. I imagine that in a neurotypical brain, intrusive thoughts are actually somewhat healthy. Like a computer checking for updates, your brain says, "Hey, we haven't had this thought in a while. Is it still bad? Yes? Okay, cool. We'll check back in 6 months." In my brain, they're more like pop-up ads that can't be blocked and you have to close them all one at a time and they keep coming up and it's all over the place. Now, generally speaking, no one acts on their intrusive thoughts. By nature, they are things we find morally reprehensible, which is what's so disturbing about them. I wouldn't attribute my violence as a child to intrusive thoughts. I expect it was all a reaction to feeling overwhelmed by everything. When I lashed out, I was basically trying to say, "Stop, please get away, this is too much." But I think reflecting on that violence has informed my intrusive thoughts growing up. My biggest fear is hurting people because I've done that and I feel terrible for it. And my intrusive thoughts are a constant reminder. For anyone watching who knows me and is now maybe concerned about me being violent, I assure you I have not been violent in a very long time. In fact, I've been described by a few people as very gentle. And I think that's because I'm so hypervigilant about not hurting anyone that I overcompensate and come across as the epitome of non-violence. Maybe. I hope. So I guess that intrusive thoughts are kind of a positive thing for me in that it's curbed my behavior, but internally it's just constant shame and guilt. Which just happens to be a good segue. Rejection-sensitive dysphoria can be defined as extreme emotional pain or sensitivity triggered by the perceived notion, not necessarily the reality, of rejection, criticism, or failure. In my case, this all can amount to the powerful belief that everyone either hates me or tolerates me as a burden, to which I may respond with anger or by just disappearing. For the record, I know that everyone doesn't actually hate me, but unfortunately my brain needs to be reminded regularly. Boredom. I get bored easily. But unlike most people, I won't tell you when I'm bored, I'll just wander off and find something else to do. And those friendships that I drifted away from, as much as they were affected by my skepticism and my feelings of loneliness, I now realize that I almost definitely moved on from some of those people out of boredom. Now, I'm not saying that any of my friends are boring. If I'm bored of you, that's on me, and I need to get better at engaging my relationships further. But also, I tend to go through life changes more frequently than others, so I might just be in a different place to you. It happens. Social cues. This is the big one. this is one I could probably make a whole video on if I wanted to. I'm not totally oblivious to social cues, obviously, but they just don't really click for me the same way they seem to for everyone else. When people use them, it feels like they're complicating things with unnecessary extra stuff. I imagine it like if you're watching this video, you can understand what I'm saying, but like imagine if there was also subtitles and they were mildly Google translated, and then in the corner there was a sign language translator and they're doing their thing, and for some reason I've been heavily dubbed by an actor with a
strange list.
Yeah, highly unnecessary. I admit that I have a bad habit of deliberately ignoring social cues when I do manage to notice them, purely out of spite. Because my initial response is always frustration. I feel like I'm being unfairly held to a social standard that I don't understand and that I never agreed to in the first place. However, I now recognize that it would be equally frustrating to be punished by me just for using the social cues that you've comfortably used your whole life. I'm trying my best to stay humble and ask for guidance during confusing social interactions. Accommodations are appreciated, but I don't feel that I'm specifically entitled to any. I'm not telling people I have ADHD with the expectation that they'll change their habits just to make my life easier. But I hope that if I can accommodate for what you're used to, you can at least be respectful and patient when I'm not used to something. If I get something wrong, please let me know rather than making assumptions or jumping to conclusions. And if I feel unreasonably pressured, I will ask you for a more considerate clarification rather than just spiting you out of hand. At the end of the day, ADHD is an explanation, not an excuse. My diagnosis has not changed the fact that I have done terrible things. I have manipulated, hurt, and caused great discomfort to many people. And I will admit that distilling my behavior into those three vague categories feels like the biggest disservice possible to the people I've affected. They deserve to hear me acknowledge what they experienced and what they felt as a result of my actions. But this video is not the place for me to do that. What I will acknowledge is that before my diagnosis, I would often try to justify, try to excuse my behavior by labeling myself as unstable, as severely mentally ill, as some aberration of humankind from which you could expect no better. I was irresponsible, cowardly, and selfish because there is no excuse. I did terrible things. I did. Not my disorder. My actions are not representative of ADHD or its community. And to anyone and everyone that I've mistreated, I'm not asking for forgiveness. Because it's not up to me to decide whether I've earned that right. I just ask that you hear me as I promise to be better. And I hope that you can believe that I will carry this apology with me forever. I'm sorry. I'm truly sorry. Perhaps I deserve it, but I have also had terrible things done to me. I've experienced years of verbal and physical abuse. I've been sexually assaulted on multiple occasions. I was even egged once. Not sure why I said that one last. You'd think being egged is the least terrible thing on that list. Although, how many people can say they've had eggs thrown at them outside of a joke context? The reason I felt I should also mention the things done to me is that while my symptoms give context to my experiences, I feel what shaped my struggles the most has been the placement of ADHD within society. We live in a fundamentally neurotypical world. Until very recently, the progression of modern civilization as a whole has consistently moved further and further away from the needs and natures of the neurodiverse community. ADHD kids are more likely to be bullied than anyone else. But, at the same time, ADHD kids are also more likely to be the ones doing the bullying. That the term bullying is used primarily in the context of children in order to simplify and downplay what is essentially toxic behavior. If we remove that term, bullying, the idea that we're left with is, if you have ADHD, chances are you will be a victim or an abuser. Or, in cases like mine, you'll be both. Now, I was diagnosed as an adult, so I don't know what it's like to be diagnosed as a child. I don't know how much you're told or how much your parent is told. But I assume it's limited to symptoms and treatments alone, because I can't imagine having to sit down with a parent and tell them that their child's place in the world would probably involve pain. I couldn't bear the thought of having to say, your child is more likely to develop an eating disorder. Your child is more likely to suffer from addiction and substance abuse. Your child shares a disorder with more than a third of convicted criminals. Your child is at higher risk of sexual assault. Your child is at 30% higher risk of suicide. And when they're older, your child will be 50% more likely to be in a serious car accident. Your child is 3 times more likely to be dead by the age of 45. But these are not symptoms. These are not the traits of ADHD. These are statistics from a society blissfully unaware and unbothered by the traits of ADHD. And I wish that I could be more specific with these statistics rather than just saying more likely over and over again. But despite being one of the most well-researched disorders in medicine, it was really hard for me to find ADHD statistics that are consistently and universally accurate. And I think that's because we focus so much on the disorder itself and not enough on its place in a neurotypical society. Most research is done by people with ADHD, which makes sense. It's only fair that those with the disorder should be the experts. In fact, I think I prefer it that way. As much as I have been very lucky to be treated by doctors who are well-informed and supportive, I've learned 10 times more from my fellow ADHDers. I feel like the ADHD community is a warm and loving support group that myself and other ADHDers can just escape to when the neurotypical world is just not willing to give us an inch. And I'm thankful for such a safe space. But why? Why do we have to keep escaping? I initially wanted to make this video just for me, to get things off my chest. And it was scary. It was really scary. I was worried that people would think I was looking for attention or sympathy. I'm not. If anyone still thinks that, I'm not at all. It's just that it's easier to tell a story when you know someone might be listening. It keeps you honest. unlike the stories that we tell ourselves. But what made it even easier, what made it less scary, was the idea of aiding ADHD Awareness Month. Awareness, not pride. I'm not here to celebrate and get excited about my diagnosis. I've already done that. I'm not here to spread awareness within the ADHD community. We understand it better than anyone. I can say from experience that the newly diagnosed or yet to be diagnosed are in good hands. So I'm here to spread awareness to everyone else. While my disorder is an explanation for why I might seem weird to you, it is not an excuse to single me out or cast me aside. I don't want anyone to end up taking the path that I found for myself. ADHD is not just an affliction. It's not some genetic failing. We're not broken. We're built for something different. We have as many strengths as we do weaknesses. The core of our struggles comes from the fact that this world was not made with us in mind. I'd like to say that months after my diagnosis, my problems are solved and my story is complete. But that's obviously not the case. Nor will it ever be. I've spent my whole life trying to fit in, trying to make sense, trying harder and harder and harder, and the only thing that my diagnosis has changed about that is now I know which direction I need to try for. I only hope that the rest of the world can try a new direction of its own. And maybe, one day, we might all meet in the middle.
Or something like that. One of the many benefits of me having to re-edit the video and have these little intro, outro explanations is that I can actually give a proper ending, which I will think of as I'm filming this. Thank you for making it all the way through the 2 parts, each part being distinctly long as it is. I very much appreciate it. Obviously, this was quite a personal thing for me, and it was also ended up being an experience of growth for me more than I was expecting. When I was filming this, and also preparing to film it a month or so ago, it was obviously quite, emotionally draining, but I was determined to do it. But I had this mentality of, I've got to get it done, just sort of get it done, get it over and done with. But I feel like these past couple of weeks, having to actually take my time, or surrender to the idea of taking my time, because I had worked out that editing, obviously I'm going to there's no way that I can just bludge this. I have to actually do it semi-properly. Through doing that, I sort of learnt more about what I actually was trying to say. I can actually now reflect on it with you now. Obviously, I alluded to certain things that involve specific people in the video. Obviously, out of respect, I tried to be as vague as possible. I just want to make it clear that I don't expect any sort of response from those people. Don't feel that you have to respond in any way. If you do feel like responding, or just having a chat with me about the things I said, or the things you maybe wished that I said, don't hesitate to contact me. I would be very happy to have that conversation. Just note that I am generally quite busy, so if I don't respond immediately, or if I say, yeah, we can talk, but like in 2 weeks or so, just know that I'm just busy normally. So I will get to everyone who wants to talk. I definitely want to do that. On the other side of things, I obviously talked a lot about ADHD traits, symptoms, statistics a little bit. I tried to. Again, I'm not an expert, and I also deliberately didn't include everything. That was just a snapshot thing of all the things I possibly could talk about. And maybe I will go into more depth about certain things on this channel at some point. I don't know. But having said all that, anyone who does have ADHD or is part of the neurodiversity community who's watched this and thinks that I've got something like unforgivably wrong, please say so. Come and tell me. I'm happy to be corrected. I don't want to spread misinformation at all. I invite people to please share this, not specifically just this video, but just maybe your experience with it. Ultimately, as much as a lot of this was personal, the key point of this video was for ADHD awareness. I feel like the quickest way to spread awareness is not through the people who already know stuff. It's through the people who are looking to know more. So yeah, it's up to you guys not just to share this video, but to go looking for more things to share, more things to learn. If I do start making more on this channel, I promise that I will do it the best I can. I think part of my journey, learning about my ADHD and solving the problems caused by my ADHD, just generally growing as a person, has changed my mentality about how I want to approach stuff. And that if I really want to do something, i.e. make stuff on YouTube or reach out to people about ADHD awareness, I'm going to take the time to do it in a way that I can feel proud of it, and that I can hope other people are excited by. Damn. No, I still didn't think of an ending. Some of you may be wondering why there's a piece of hubcap on the wall there.